Hi everyone! In today's lesson, we will answer the question, what does weather have to do with it? Weather plays a big role in the success of your school garden, so it's important we understand it. Let's get started to learn about weather science. In our lesson, we're going to learn to observe and make sense of the weather. We'll learn some weather measuring devices. We'll learn how to understand weather patterns so we can make predictions and see how that all applies to our school garden. All right, we have 6 big vocab words today. So make sure that you write them down in your garden journals as you follow along, and you can pause it at any time to make sure you can keep up. Our first word you probably already know, and it's weather. Weather is the daily state of the atmosphere, or the air, at any given place. So it's exactly the way things feel that day in your environment. The atmosphere, which I just mentioned, is all the air surrounding the Earth. So the weather occurs inside this atmosphere. You can think of it like a little bubble around our Earth that keeps us safe and warm and happy. Our third word, precipitation, we should try and say together because it's a big one. Let's try it. Precipitation. And precipitation is just a fancy word for anything that falls from the sky, like rain, snow, hail. Any form of water that can fall down on us is a form of precipitation. Here are our next 3 words. Remember, we should be writing these down in our garden journals as we follow along. Humidity is the next word, and humidity is the amount of moisture in the air. So you may have felt on certain days that it's humid outside and the air almost feels a little wet or sticky or muggy. That's when there's really high humidity. The air pressure is the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on Earth. And this isn't something that we can normally feel. This is something that we can test with tools and equipment. But that's what affects the winds and the weather. And the tool that we use to test what the air pressure is called a barometer. Let's say that word together. Barometer. Great job, everyone. We finished up our vocab. Now let's talk a little bit more about how people make weather predictions. Have you ever wondered how the people on TV know what the weather is going to be? Well, they're not just guessing. Meteorologists rely on patterns to be able to predict what is coming next in the weather. There are patterns in nature that people have observed, and now we know that certain conditions in the atmosphere lead to different types of weather. After reading the vocab words, can you guess how the weather patterns are observed? That's right, with different tools like barometers at a weather station. And weather stations have all sorts of special tools that determine wind speed, wind direction, air temperature, humidity, rainfall, and air pressure. There are weather stations like this all over the world. One example that we talked about already is a barometer, and we know that it measures air pressure. But let's think about how that can help predict if a storm is more or less likely to happen. Well, a drop in air pressure means that precipitation, and remember that means rain, is more likely to occur. This is because when there's less pressure on the air, more water vapor can rise up to the cooler part of the atmosphere where they can turn into clouds. So low air pressure means that rain might come. What about when the pressure is low, but the temperature is really hot? That means that a thunderstorm can happen. We don't have many of those in California because here, when the pressure is low, the temperature is normally cool too. But in other places, with hot temperatures and low pressure, they get thunder and lots of rain. Now let's think of some ways that the local weather forecast can help us take care of our garden. Well, it helps us to plan to know how much water to give the plants, or if they might get too cold, too hot, too dry, or too wet. So we can prepare by either watering plants more or less if we know there's going to be rain, and we can cover plants up with shade cloth if it's going to be super duper hot. This way, we're always taking really great care of our garden by using the weather forecast to our advantage. Time for you to do some weather science with your garden teacher and see how your garden is doing.
Hi kids, it's Mrs. Mary and I am out here on a gorgeous, bright, sunny day in your garden at Shell Beach. And I'm here so that I can show you my new tool for a weather station. This is my new little Windsock, handmade by yours truly. And it's a very important tool when you're trying to determine what's going on with weather. Now you just learned that weather is what's going on right now where we are. So today's weather is warm and sunny and nice and breezy. Now the Windsock is a tool that we use for a couple of things. One is, what is the direction of the wind? That can tell us, for example, out here at Shell Beach, that can tell us, is the wind coming in off the ocean, or is it coming from behind me, which would be off the mountains and the inlands? So how come this is important to us? Why would this make any difference to have this information? Well, if we know that the wind is coming in off the ocean, it's going to be a much cooler day than if the wind was coming from the inland where it's very hot. And how would that make a difference in our garden? Well, what we would do is we would adjust our irrigation. Super important when you want to keep your plants healthy and thriving. So that is an adjustment that we would make depending on which way that wind is blowing. So these are the reasons that we use a Windsock. And I have a great project for you coming up. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a Windsock. And you can work with me. We can do it together, or this is something you can do on your own later on. All right, so let's get started and let's make that Windsock. All right, let's get started with our project for today, and we are going to make that Windsock that you saw in the garden. And the materials are real easy to come by, very simple things. First, you'll want a piece of large paper to make your main part of the Windsock out of. I used a old grocery bag, so I did some recycling on top of it, and then I used a marker to just do some quick little fun garden drawings on there. You can do whatever you want. You could color, you could stick tissue paper on, any kind of design that you might like. And of course, we'll need a scissors and some tape, and also a piece of string or ribbon. And the last thing that we need that will make it super neat is some tissue paper. And you can use used tissue paper. It doesn't have to be new. So the first thing we're going to do after we get our craft paper all drawn on, we are going to make a cylinder. Now you can do this at home, and you can do it along with me if you'd like, or this is something you can do later on. But it is kind of a neat project. So I do recommend having your tape already cut and ready to go. So I'm going to tape one end of my cylinder like that. You can see I just have that little edge taped, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. There we go. Okay, I think I'll do one right in the middle. And I'm going to do that on the inside. Okay. There we go. So now we have a cylinder. This is where the wind will flow. And this is how it's going to be showing us our direction of the wind. So the next thing that I want to do is set something up so that we can hang it from a tree or a pole. And I'm going to use this string to attach. And the first thing I'm going to do is very carefully poke a little hole in my cylinder. There we go. And then I'm going to do another one on the other side. Now, you younger little people, you might want to have some help from an adult on working with the scissors. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie kind of a big knot on the end. I'm going to tie it a couple of times so it doesn't go back through that hole that I made. Okay. There we go. And then I'm going to do one on the other side. Okay, got to get it through both holes. So I made that hole a little bit smaller. There we go. And I'm going to tie a knot there. There we go, nice big fat knot. And now, there. So that is how you would hang your windsock. Now, to make it super pretty, and to also really show how the wind is blowing, which is the whole idea of a windsock, I'm going to take my scissors, and these are just large sheets of wrapping tissue paper, but I'm going to fold it just to make it go a little faster. And maybe I'll just trim that edge so they're a little bit more even. There we go. And now I'm going to make them, I don't know, about maybe 1.5 inches. Nice big ones. All right. So now we have our little very lightweight ribbons to go on the end of our windsock. I love these colors. You can use any colors you want, of course. Now we're going to need more tape, and we're going to go on the opposite side of the hanger, and we're just going to tape these inside the sock. And I'm going to go ahead and make a whole bunch of little tape pieces to start. Very conveniently located on my hand there. And I'm going to slide that inside and hold that down and then put a piece of tape. And I think I'll just rotate colors until it's all done. All right, let's take a look at that now. So here are all your things that'll blow in the wind, and your decorated windsock, and you are good to go. So that's our activity for today, and I will be doing 2 more fun things coming up in the next videos. So thanks for watching, and I hope you learned a lot about weather science today and about the instruments of weather science. Okay, everybody, see you later. Bye-bye.
See if you can copy down and answer all of these comprehension questions.